Welcome everybody. Gonna be a lot of action tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for mods, team members, subscribers, all of those. Congratulations to you, Prof, going over 100,000 subscribers. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And I also have had a big jump here over the last few days. I guess it's just being close to you and all of those sweater vests. I don't know, but
yeah, I'm not sure that that's it. I think it's just that people are really concerned about what's going on, and there's a lot to be concerned about. And that's why we're even doing another live right now.
We are.
We got a lot to cover.
We've got a lot to cover, and we're going to jump right in, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thanks to the mods doing all their work. And I want to welcome our new moderator, Pyro Kurt Brubaker. Thank you for helping. Dunk on you, BB, Prof, all your mods, all of the team members. Thank you, guys. We're going to jump straight in. And we're going to stick to the guns here. I had this thumbnail before Prof was able to confirm he was going to be with me. Basically, critical changes and colossal questions. As I was working all morning, Professor, and I was preparing for my afternoon video, I like to release it about 3 in the afternoon, about 10 o'clock in the evening in Ukraine. There was so much out there, and I was literally confusing myself trying to get a thought line. I don't know about you, but I'm hearing so many stories. And I think if I'm having them, all of the work I've done in Ukraine and you're having them, I know the community and the people around the world are having them. Like, what is the real story with all the critical changes and the questions that are in the air right now? Were you in a similar boat?
Yeah, my 3 big stories keeps being 10 big stories, and I'm trying to whittle it down, but there are so many directions that we need to cover to adequately understand who's doing what and what's happening where. So,
well, let's jump right in. Professor had messaged me this morning. He says, Greg, can you do a frontline update for me and give me the update for my community on what's happening? And I messaged him back immediately, pretty much immediately. And I said, Prof, I can't. When I give updates on the front lines, I want it to always be absolutely accurate. And even inside Ukraine right now, sir.
Yeah, so there's background here. What I'm seeing in OSINT public information is, Ukraine's actually pushing back in some places, and I'm seeing that, and I want to verify and see what you see. And if I can corroborate it, I feel much more comfortable. And if I can't corroborate it, then I can say, well, this is what's published, but let's take it with a grain of salt. So,
here's what I'm going to tell you, and I was just not comfortable. I mean, we get our information from the soldiers that we work with on all the front lines. And basically, when I share about front lines, of course, you have Deep State, you have Institute for the Study of War, you have LiveMap UA, you have Andrew Perpetua, you have all these different mapping sources. I even look at Russian maps and try to cross-reference. Right now, there's so much different information, and I was waiting for a certain analyst I follow to give his update, and it was like a half hour ago he gave his update. So we are going to share that with you before we jump into a lot of the bigger news, because we need to remember that even though we're talking about peace talks, negotiations, things are getting better. All the craziness is happening throughout the world, the EU, France, US, Russia, you name it. These guys are fighting on the front lines 24/7. They're not watching the news. They're fighting, and they're fighting for the future of Ukraine and the future of all us. So I do have the latest updates. And this you can trust, guys. This you can trust right here. The situation in the Pokrovsk direction is stabilizing. Ukraine made some pushes, Russia made some pushes back, and now we've come to a stabilization, but it's still very difficult. This is due to the partial depletion of the enemy's forces and to a change in approaches to managing our troops. Reminder that the command was changed for the Southern forces, and they're reaping the benefits of that. It's just unfortunate, and we will see this down the road when there is a delay in supply that will have a negative effect on Ukraine.
I was going to say, you have a window of opportunity right now as Russia is trying to hold it together, and Ukraine's actually making some inroads a little bit on the margins around the edges of things. And when they run out of ammunition, that's going to be a whole different ball of wax. And I hope it doesn't come to that, but it's likely to come to that eventually.
Well, I know for a fact
Europe doesn't. Yeah, go ahead.
I know for a fact, talking to commanders, sleeping in the same room with the soldiers, going with them, they now will be rationing their supply. because this is what
Yeah.
has happened multiple times during this war. So right now, when Ukraine could, like, if they were fully supplied right now, which they are supplied, but they now have to think ahead. If they were fully
Yeah.
supplied and they knew more was coming, then they would just
Yeah. Right.
unload.
It's like last summer all over again.
It is. It's deja vu. They would unload and they would take a lot of the territory right now around Pokrovsk, but they just can't because they're having to think what happens next week, in a month from now, in 2 months from now. Additionally, the enemy also continues to exert heavy pressure in Kupiansk, Toretsk. Ukraine has made a push back on Toretsk. That is stabilized as well. Chasiv Yar over to the east of Konstantinivka and Siversk, east of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. Russia pushing pretty hard. Kharkiv direction, it is unrelenting drone attacks every night. Shahid attacks every night, hitting residential buildings. Last night on my video, I was talking about Kryvyi Rih and the ballistic missiles that took out the Centralna Hotel. That's a hotel I've stayed in many times. Can confirm it's not a military target. There were volunteers there, and it just shows you the terror of Russia and the misunderstanding of the United States. Additionally, we have increased activity in the Kherson region and Zaporizhia region, meaning more artillery, more shelling. There are even attempts, as always, for Russia to get across the bridgehead there around Antonivka, which is just to the east of Kherson, but that has been unsuccessful, but there's much more activity. Unfortunately, the situation in Kursk is very difficult. Right now, there's even internal discussions on maybe a drawback. Russia has been able to cut some of the supply routes there, but Ukraine is not leaving because initially, this is the negotiating card, or one of the cards. Ukraine is in Russia, and we now see that it doesn't seem at this point that is so important for the way things are heading and the strong arm, in my opinion, that's being put on Ukraine right now. But they're holding, they're not leaving quarters, they're fighting, but it's brutal. And then the final statement from the analyst says the war continues despite the loud statements of politicians, and our army needs help here and now. So that's the front
with
line.
that, most of what happens here on the front line is going to be predicated on what happens politically, mostly from Europe moving forward. So much of what we're going to have to talk about is politics. And
we are, and we're going to talk about that a lot. I will tell you guys that are watching right now, and I do want to say thank you. If you guys do have a question, or it's something important, Prof and I were talking earlier, please put it into Prof's chat or put it into my chat. And if there's some important question, the mod will get it to me, or I'll try to keep my eye on it as well. Thank you, F Oink, for your super chat. Repeat after me. Diaper Donnie is not negotiating. He is executing orders from the Russian Tsar. I'm tending to agree with you, dear sir, and we're going to talk about some of that in just a little bit. Jermaine Sikoti, welcome to crew member. Thank you for joining the Hope Train. Johnny Nedregard, my Norwegian island dweller there for 22 kroners. Linda S., Australia, gifting 10 memberships. Petra Olson, Swedish non-smoking initiative with love to Ukraine. And Peklo, 5 quid. Thank you, sticker. Keep it up. We will keep it up. And thank you. Now, guys, I try to also warn you when I'm doing the lives right now, Ukraine watching very heavily. And this is the last thing we'll talk technically about the war. Then we're going to get into the political side of it. Preparations. This is coming from the same analyst in multiple sources tonight for Ukraine. Threat of combat sorties of Russian strategic aircraft. That's the Tupolev 22s, 95s, 160s. We are monitoring closely. Actions were recorded on the Proverb movements and vectors for launch of the aircraft, indicating possible preparations for a missile strike. In addition, the enemy deployed 3 missile carriers to the Black Sea with a total salvo of up to 16 caliber class missiles. And this is at a time when, according to experts, we are experiencing a significant shortage of air defense systems and missiles for them. So stay alert. That's the message coming to the Ukrainians tonight. And they know when these airplanes do these certain movements, because they were loaded about 48 hours ago. So when they do certain vectors, certain movements, relocate to a different air base, Ukraine pays attention. Unfortunately, when you talk about right now, the intelligence being cut for Ukraine, fortunately,
and
it doesn't
pick back up.
So yeah, go ahead.
And being picked back up, the French. The French are
Exactly.
the ones. So the Brits can't do it because the Brits share the intelligence with the Americans, right? So they can't do it, and they've been told they're not allowed. But that doesn't apply to Macron, right? So
And
okay, so he's got his own
and
spy satellites and things along those lines. I did a short 5-minute dedicated video just to that. So I mean, I've never been like, yay, Macron, but Macron's been pretty big here for the last year and a half. He's actually stepped up.
we're going to really, towards the end of the stream, we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to ask you a couple of direct questions and just get your answer on it, because that's why we're live streaming tonight. There's so many mixed messages and
we just got to talk about these things.
We've just got to talk about it. So let's start by tonight, guys. Typically, we'll know about 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time if these will be combat sorties. So right now it's 4. I'm sorry, 2 a.m. Ukraine time. My apologies. 7
We know what you mean.
p.m. Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. About 2 a.m. Ukraine time is when we know, typically in Ukraine, they'll say, okay, these are actual combat sorties. And then what happens, the messages start coming to the Ukrainian people, and it will say things like this. Imagine living under this. Airplanes are now in proper strike position. We'll let you know. And then a message comes 5 minutes later. Caliber class missile crossing over Lugansk Oblast, 2 crossing over Sumy Oblast, and then they start vectoring and tracking them. What a horrible way to have to live.
So the real trick is that they're going to be rationing not just artillery, but Patriot missiles, and they're going to run out of them eventually. And okay, so if everything's cut off and we're waiting for both Ukraine and Russia to come to the table, so you're cut off until Russia comes to the table too? Is that what we're hearing? Because that's what it sounds like.
That's exactly
if I was Russia,
the chaos we're hearing.
If I was Russia, I would just drag my feet as long as possible, because that gives you every advantage.
They are going to drag their feet.
Anti-negotiation 101.
This is a disaster. Yeah. I'm sorry. We can just cut straight to it right now. This is a disaster because it's misunderstood. Macron gets it. He gets it. The European leaders are getting it. President Vladimir Zelensky gets it. And I just do not understand why there is so much trust. That's my opinion. Trust from the White House in regard to Vladimir Putin. I don't get it. In fact, this is a good time for me to play this before we do this. You explain the change here then, right here. Everybody watch this.
When the Soviet Union fell in the early 1990s, Ukraine was left with the world's 3rd largest stockpile of tactical nuclear weapons and strategic nuclear weapons on the planet. But they signed this agreement with the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia that basically said, if you give up your nuclear weapons, we, these 3 countries that signed to this, will provide for your defense and assure you of your defense. And so Ukraine did that. They gave up these weapons. Well, now, this was signed in 1994, 20 years later, one of the 3 countries that signed that agreement hasn't just not provided for their defense, they actually invaded them. And I want to make a point on this for a second. Think about if you're one of these other countries around the world right now that feels threatened by your neighbors. And the United States and the rest of the world are going to you and saying, listen, don't develop nuclear weapons. Don't develop nuclear weapons, South Korea. Don't develop nuclear weapons, Japan. Don't develop nuclear weapons, Saudi Arabia. We will protect you. We will watch out for you. What kind of lesson do you think this instance sends to them? I think the message this is sending to many nations around the world is perhaps we can no longer count on the security promises made by the free world. Perhaps we need to start looking out for ourselves. And that's why the Ukrainian situation is so much more important than simply what's happening in Europe. This has implications around the world.
What happened?
What happened is that what you see there is what he really believes, and what he is saying now is dependent on him wanting to keep his job. So he's speaking the voice of the administration, the will of the administration, as the administration policy is. He's not speaking his own policy. So something shifted. This is what I mean by the difference between conservatives and MAGA. There's a big difference between that. Marco Rubio has never met a communist he ever liked, right? that's who Rubio is, but he also wants to keep his job as Secretary of State. So that's where he is.
But doesn't there come down to a character clause?
I mean, I'm just telling you, like he can't really push too far against the administration. So if the administration's policy is this, I think it's stupid, frankly. I mean,
Thank you.
like this is my problem with my party, is that I haven't moved from where I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago in understanding like how the world works. But the party has shifted largely because the populist sentiment is such that it doesn't matter what's happening in the rest of the world. We need to take care of just what's here at home and that's short-sighted. It's only one half of the coin. And if it blows up, you got a whole different problem set, and then you're really involved. So,
well, I will just say this. I'm sorry, I will just say this in regard to the Ukrainian situation and the global situation and foreign policy. Then if you can't stand up for what is right, you're not worth a plug nickel. If you want to toe the line that much, I call you a coward, Marco Rubio, and I call Donald Trump evil for what he's trying to do. I'm sorry. I'm a conservative as well, Prof. But if you are that weak and spineless and yellow that just those few years ago, you can make that bold statement and now you can flip it, you don't deserve to be the Secretary of the State. Resign.
All right. So what I don't understand is how Trump is negotiating, because everything that I understand about negotiation and deterrence and those kind of things would dictate that you do the opposite of what Trump is doing. And I'm not sure that he is, playing 10 moves ahead in chess or something like that. Could be, but I don't see it. I mean, I'll eat my words later if he does, and I hope I'm wrong. But I just don't understand how you would make all these concessions rather than show, like, hey, like if he was doing to Putin what he's doing to Ukraine, even if at the same time, like if he's turning the screws on Ukraine and simultaneously turning the screws on Putin, I could kind of understand that. But it seems like he's only turning the screws one direction, and I don't understand. I hope that I'm wrong, but I don't see it at this point. And he was showing signs that seemed more positive before, but not now. And just got to explain, this is what I see.
This is why the title tonight, so many questions, colossal changes. So much is going to happen over the next few days. We talked about the front lines. We talked about the potential for a massive airstrike tonight. Whether it's tonight or tomorrow night or the next night, it will happen. I mean, that's just the way it is. And
one of my viewers said this: don't be too hard on Rubio. He's probably one of the only voices of reason that can restrain Trump. So let's say that that's the case, and behind closed doors he's saying other things, but he's saying the public line because he has to say that public line. I mean, still the public line is what the public line is, and that's the wrong direction. And Rubio was my great hope that on the other side of Trump, instead of Vance being the standard bearer, you'd have the former Secretary of State. And very often it is the former Secretary of State who becomes the next president. Mm-hmm. So, but he's just, so far, this has been disappointing.
Okay. So we're talking about this. We played that clip of Rubio. We see Rubio next week going to be heading with Witkoff. He's going to be heading there to meet with Andriy Yermak, the head of the office of the president. This is going to happen. Now, they had to say that this time because the one that was supposed to be on the 25th didn't happen after they said it was going to happen. Now, Witkoff coming out today and saying this is going to happen. And on Tuesday in Saudi Arabia, either in Riyadh or Jeddah, the agenda for the U.S.-Ukraine meeting will include the basis for a settlement agreement and a ceasefire, per Witkoff. The meeting will be Tuesday, March 11th in Riyadh or Jeddah. Washington is counting on restoring relations with Ukraine, including lifting the pause in the transfer of weapons and intelligence, per Witkoff. Previously, President Zelensky was scheduled to be in Riyadh on Monday and Tuesday, officially to meet with the Arabian Prince. I've got all of that information updated for you. If you guys remember, Zelensky had said, I'm not going to Riyadh, I'm going on my own schedule, and it was scheduled for March 10th. That was a couple of weeks ago. Isn't it interesting that they make this meeting at the same time, approximately, that Zelensky is going to be there. And I'll get your comments on this. Additionally, the Treasury Secretary.
So go back a second.
Go back
to Witkoff. I don't trust Witkoff any further than I can throw him.
Hold on. You know what you get for that?
Слава Україні!
We got a no trust clause. Hold on. We got a no trust clause for Witkoff from Professor Gerdes.
Yeah. There's some characters that I'm saying, like, okay, Rubio, probably good. I think Waltz can see things. Kellogg can see things. I would say that there are some that are just too squirrely, that why are they even there, except that they're loyalists. Witkoff is a loyalist. I don't understand. Like, he's not your best negotiator. He's very heavily leaning towards Putin, and that's not going to help things. So, okay. Anyway, I'm done.
Now everybody's putting it out there, and I'm going to answer the question for you guys about, it's like so many questions. Okay, so Zelensky is going to be in Saudi Arabia. Are you scheduled to be there? So does that mean actually this is going to be some secret meeting with Zelensky and all of these things? And the answer is no, ladies and gentlemen. President Vladimir Zelensky just half hour ago made it very clear he will not be at this meeting. He's playing his role, in my opinion, very strong and very well for the immense amount of pressure that he is under. Now, if this meeting happens, which they say it's going to happen, they're going to talk about the basis for a settlement agreement and a ceasefire per Witkoff. If you take it to the next page, Treasury Secretary came out, Besant, and said, U.S. demands Ukraine agree to quick ceasefire with Russia as condition for signing mineral deal, hopefully on the 11th of March. The last time I checked, isn't that like holding somebody hostage? Just checking.
Well, okay, so you have to. I did a video about 2 years ago talking about, like, follow the interests. Don't follow the money, follow the interests. So, like, Erdogan, you can trust him to consistently follow whatever's going to be good for Erdogan. Same thing with Putin, same thing with Trump, same thing with, right? They're all going to like, so, and this is Trump's interest and Trump's interest only. Trump is interested in making a deal. And if you understand that, then everything else that Trump does follows.
Okay, I'm cutting and pasting the actual statements. So I typically try not to rely on just media or headlines or Twitter or nothing. I actually get it. I build this stuff. I put it in there. So here, okay. So I have a question for you. If all of this happens, Besant says a quick ceasefire for Ukraine, we can agree on a mineral deal, hopefully on the 11th, then the U.S. will not hesitate to go all in on sanctions against Russian energy if it helps bring about a ceasefire in Ukraine. It's talking in circles, first of all. But I have a question for you, and I'll go big screen on this. Why is there no talk about the invading nation stopping firing?
Yeah, it's backwards. I can't explain that. That's just what I don't understand. Like, why are we trying to strong arm the country that's been the victim? I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, but we want people to know, if you're watching right now on my channel or Prof's channel, thank you for being here and for working with us to figure this out. We don't know the answers, but we're processing the information, and that's why we went live, because there's just a lot of chaos out there today and questions that there are no answers to yet. But you just hang on. We're going to take you down a pathway in a minute that is really chaotic.
Day 236 was my follow the interest video. How about that? It was pretty clear some time ago. So I just linked that in mine. I don't know that will make. I've been pinned it in mine. If anybody wants to watch it, I'm pretty sure it'll still hold up to time, because this is just, tell you what, this is the way the world works.
I see it in my chat right here. Thank goodness Europe is stepping up. Somebody put in here really easy to air visual limited. Easy to explain, Greg, because it's a false deal. I would tend to agree with that completely, air visual. There is no deal. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, no, it's not like he has a deal worked out and he's going to say, yeah, this is do this, you do that. He's going to try to work to something, and then he'll whatever happens, he'll claim victory on the other side and say, see, we made a deal.
Great.
Whether Putin violates it or not, I think that's where we will be.
Matt Max is always active in my Discord. Great person. There are 20 or 30 YouTube channels analyzing this, and nobody has a clear clue. But
if they do say they have a clue, they're lying.
Don't listen to them. That's exactly what I was
Run away from that channel.
If they say they know the answer, well, I don't want to say unsubscribe. Just maybe choose to listen to different people, because honestly, nobody knows right now. That's why I couldn't even give a Frontline update today until that analyst came out that I trust completely. So the question is, then, big question about everybody's mind. So is this like a setup? And is Zelensky going to go? He's already going to be there. Is he going to ease over to the meeting? The answer to that, as of today and right now, is no. Zelensky saying next week, and this is directly from him about 1 hour ago. His words, his writing. Next week on Monday, I am scheduled to visit the Saudi Arabia to meet with the Crown Prince, Zelensky. My team will remain in Saudi Arabia to work with the American partners. Ukraine is most interested in peace. First of all, silence in the skies can be established and fully controlled, meaning I'm looking for a cessation of missile strikes, long-range drones, and bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure. Also, silence at sea. That is the cessation of all military operations in the Black Sea, which will ensure calm and safe navigation. Earlier, he was also speaking about a full prisoner exchange, 100%. Just some talking points to get some talking points out there. He then said the war must be stopped as soon as possible, and Ukraine is ready to work 24/7 with partners in America and Europe for peace. Directly from Zelensky.
This is full on brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So what are the odds that Putin would agree to silence in the skies, established and fully controlled, and no long-range strikes on either side's infrastructure?
I can
on a scale of 1 to 100.
0.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah. So Zelensky saying, I'm willing to do this. And Putin will say, nope. And then you'll see. Now, here's my theory. If, like, people say, well, Trump is Putin's puppet. Okay. Like, he likes Putin. I get that. Trump can zig and zag and zig and zag and zig and zag because he has no internal compass. He can do that. If he only zigs toward Russia and he only continues to zig and just zig and just zig and just zig, then you know that he's Putin's puppet, right? If he zigs and then he zags and then he zigs and then he zags, then you'll see a different kind of something. I don't know which it'll be, but my guess is just like Little Rocket Man being the worst thing ever and then being the best thing ever after he does what Trump wants or says that he does what Trump wants. Okay. I think that's what we'll see. So I think that if Zelensky's smart and he can position himself the right way, that I'm asking for these kind of simple things to have a peace to come to the table, and Putin doesn't do it. That could potentially show it can pull back the curtain.
It can pull back for the curtain for the very small percentage of people that don't see the truth. That's leading this American White House right now in regard to the war in Ukraine, because this is perfection. He calls
so I have somebody saying the professor's delusional if he thinks that Trump will be tough on Putin, but Trump's going to be in a bind if Zelensky's saying, yes, if we do this, we can have a ceasefire, and Putin's unwilling to say anything, then that's going to put Trump in a awkward place relative to Putin. Now, he could just, I guess, lean in more on Zelensky and say, well, no, we have to have an unconditional whatever ceasefire, no agreements. We just have ceasefire. And then but then I don't know that he would even honor that. Like, do you think that Putin's going to even honor just a secession so you can just have a ceasefire so Trump can win? I don't see it.
I think in 10 or 15 minutes is kind of projecting ahead as the stream. We want to try to keep it to about an hour. In about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to throw something in here that may take all the cards off the table in regard to working with ethics and proper morality in dealing with foreign nations and meddling. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But here, I concur with you completely. This was brilliant move on Zelensky. He didn't do it on a video where his English, or he only do it in Ukrainian. He wrote it. This is in writing because, you know, Trump got a letter, which he didn't get that morning, confirmed by Makarova that he lied and said he got a letter. I'm calling it, guys. He lied and said he got a letter. I know.
Letter or tweet, I don't care. It doesn't matter. He got those words. He got to say it.
He said, I received a letter this morning. I care about that. He didn't.
So that could be a misspeak. And I'm not trying to defend Trump here. I know people will think that I'm just, like Rosie said, I admire your optimism, Gerdes. How many zags before you call Trump out? So it's all for zags. So far, it's all zags. I got that. I understand that. And good people can disagree about this, but that's such a minor point to talk about. He got a letter. He said that thing from Zelensky. I think he was waiting for the mineral agreement so that he could announce that thing and didn't get it. And so what else do we got?
I agree with you
That's
completely.
why there was so little about Ukraine.
I'm confident he was coming with the big news. The mineral agreement was signed, and Zelensky and Ukraine put a chink in that plan, and he had to cover it some way. But the reality is, it was the tweet, it was that message, and however you view it is how you view it. But this, Zelensky is writing it once again. It can't be questioned, and we concur. These points, Putin will never go for.
Yeah, he can't. He can't agree to those.
Brilliant move on Zelensky's part. Now, if you're wondering, I can show you this. Let's do this button. Russia wants quick peace in Ukraine, and London is head of those resisting it. This is the ambassador to London, or to the UK, tells Sky News.
Quick peace on all their terms. That's really the thing.
That's where we're going. Yeah. In an interview on The World with Yalda Hakim, Andrei Kalin says Moscow told Washington it believes its territorial advances in Ukraine should be recognized as a part of any peace deal. And I can tell you also, in addition to that, he also said we are ready for negotiations and conversation, but we have our position. We need a new Ukraine as neutral and non-nuclear. And interesting, Meloni out of Italy.
Meloni.
Yeah, just 30 minutes ago was saying, well, maybe we could do a non-NATO invoke of Article 5. And these things are being talked about already in EU coming in. Yeah.
So they're finally talking about pushing back in a meaningful sense. Because like, what is Russia had to give up so far? What will they be forced to give up? Will give up smashing Ukraine? I mean, is that what you're going to give up to get what you want? I just don't understand.
They're going to give up nothing.
And then who's going to pay the bill?
That's their desire, to give up nothing and gain everything. That's what they do. We need a new Ukraine as neutral and non-nuclear. The territorial situation must be recognized. These territories were included in the Russian Constitution, and we will continue to insist that all Ukrainian government forces leave these territories, and we will never accept a temporary ceasefire. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, what he's calling for there is Ukraine to leave the massive city of Zaporizhia. That's what he's calling for, or be occupied. To leave it. To leave the city of Kherson again. This is what they're referring to. And it will not, he says, there will not be a temporary ceasefire. So that's coming in today. That article today answers some of our questions there. And this is a guy who's quite vocal and speaks for the Kremlin quite often. Let's go here. I have a question for you. This has been reported multiple places. The Guardian, Politico, NBC, others, and I was looking at them. Here I did clip the headlines. And the only reason that I'm going to go with this and ask you a question is because the lady on the right, Tymoshenko, actually has confirmed this. So what is this?
That's freaking brilliant too.
Okay, so let me lay it out, then get you guys out here may not know what's going on. So members of the Trump team have had talks. I'll just leave it at that. I'm going to try to make this as open as possible so I'm not speaking wrong. Have had talks with opposition leaders of Zelensky, including Peter Poroshenko, who is the former president of Ukraine, the Chocolate King. Also, they have had personal talks with Yulia Tymoshenko, who also, if you really look at leadership, Tymoshenko most likely would never be president again, but that opposition team is strong. You have Tymoshenko, you have Zelensky as the ambassador there in UK, you have Peter Poroshenko, you have Budanov, the head of the SBU. That's about it. But Guardian and Politico reporting that the Trump teams have been holding secret talks with Zelensky's opponents, trying to ramp up pressure on Zelensky to step aside and to have an election. Now, I was just going to show that, and as I was preparing, like 30 minutes before the stream started, Tymoshenko, the lady on the right, put out a statement. She said, and I'm giving it to you guys tonight, U.S. President Donald Trump is looking for a partner for peace, meaning he feels that Zelensky may not be that person. His team is looking for a partner for peace among experienced Ukrainian politicians who will help restore good relations between Ukraine and the United States, as well as begin serious work on finding effective ways to establish a stable peace. Trump aides have already held secret talks with members of the party of Peter Poroshenko. The U.S. president's team has also been in contact with Ukrainian opposition leader Yulia Tymoshenko. She confirmed 100%. She confirmed 100% that her team is conducting negotiations with all our allies, but categorically rejected the idea of holding elections during martial law. Now, I have a question for you, and I'm just going to let you roll. You're much more an expert on this than me. Isn't this meddling in the elections or foreign affairs of another sovereign nation the same thing that Americans scream about if we think Russia or China is meddling in our political business? Is this meddling? Is this illegal? For sure, to me, it's terrible.
Well, they're trying to do an end run around. They're trying to do an end run around Zelensky in order to cut a deal because they think he's obstinate and they think they can, get a better deal out of somebody else. But I think it's brilliant for her to make the quiet thing that was supposed to be hidden public. And that actually is going to help her weirdly in a political sense. And it'll help Ukraine. So it'll help Ukraine by bolstering Zelensky. But then she looks like she didn't stab him in the back because she made it public, which actually she has nothing to worry about dealing with the U.S. administration because she's not in power. So on multiple levels, that's a smart thing to do. And it's good for Zelensky. It's good for her in the long term. I thought that was a very smart political move.
Well, let me tell you this in regard to just opinion from Ukrainians. Working with Ukrainians, I just returned. Of course, I'll be going back for our next work there, and that'll be scheduled. And you guys know that's what we do, back and forth nonstop. I had dinner with a general a month or so ago, and it was a 4-hour dinner. It was a great time, and he is in Peter Poroshenko's party. He was high ranking in Poroshenko's party, and during the Trump first administration, this general met with Donald Trump at the White House for early meetings there as a part of the Ukrainian team and delegation. This guy is in the know. And I asked him specifically about inside Ukraine. You, sir, as a general fighting for Ukraine, Zelensky is your commander in chief. What about elections? Will he step down? What about martial law? All of these things. I asked him point blank, and the man could have picked his phone up and called Peter Poroshenko or even Zelensky probably, but for sure Poroshenko. He looked at me and he says, Greg, we are in a war and the world does not understand. You are getting it, but please share this message. We may disagree politically inside our nation. We may argue politically inside our nation. Sometimes we do reprehensible things in our Rada, and there have been fist fights, and Goncharenko will say something crazy, and then some other party member will say something crazy. But when it comes down to this war, make no mistake about it, Volodymyr Zelensky is our commander in chief and our president. There will be no elections. This martial law is legal. We support him. If we had a presidential change during this era of the war, you can kiss Ukraine goodbye. We stand together. And this is exactly what Tymoshenko did by coming out and saying, 100%, they're calling me behind the scenes. They're standing together.
I've heard a number of people say some variant of this. I didn't vote for Zelensky. I won't vote for him afterwards, but right now he's my president and I'll defend him.
That is the story.
So I've heard that from many Ukrainians that have said something similar to that. So, okay.
It's a fact. It's a fact. And it's not just generals and military people I've met with, but I meet with a lot of friends. Some of you guys that have been following my streams a long time, you know Pavel Ivanovich, the 93, soon to be 94-year-old veteran of Stalin's army. He built the metro in Kyiv. He comes on a live with me and he tells what's going on in the war and his perspective as being a former in the Soviet Union Red Army with Stalin, and he's just ripping it, telling the truth. He looks right at me and goes, Greg, I don't like Zelensky. I'm a Poroshenko guy, but Zelensky's my president, and we're fighting for Ukraine. Slava Ukraina! And that's what the old man does, because they rallying around their president. And Zelensky, in that White House debacle, rallied the Ukrainians even to another level.
So it was an unintended side effect. It was accidentally made. Like if you're saying Zelensky's at 4%, guess what? He's not at 4% anymore.
That's correct.
And he wasn't at 4% then, but he only made them want Zelensky even more.
They did. And okay, I really have a problem with the Trump administration talking behind Zelensky's back and then think you can negotiate with him equitably and in good faith. How does that work? Explain that to me. I don't get it.
Well, I mean, you can't really negotiate with Russia in good faith if you're arming Ukraine. And so one of the things that the Trump administration did, and I think this is terrible, this is a disastrous shift, went from we're behind you, Ukraine, to no, we're going to be trying to be in the middle between you two, and we're not arming you and we're not whatever, right? So that was a bad idea. I don't like that at all either.
Why should Zelensky even trust Donald Trump?
Has no choice. Right? What I mean, he has to try to work with him some way, because like you don't have to like somebody in order to work with them.
But if you are the leader of the free world and your team is working behind the back of the political
what's your
opponents,
alternative? Go right? I mean, is that we don't want your weapons anyway?
I understand it. It's just
so he's got to eat humble pie and try to work with them to the degree that he can. It's unfortunate, but this is where it is. I'm not saying that that's a good thing by any means.
No, it's going to bite him in the butt, in my opinion. And I mean Trump. Ida, Norwegian Chrono 119, thank you for your support. Blom Bombsheller gifting 20 memberships. Thank you, young lady. You and Dunk on You, $20 super chat. Ukraine will prevail no matter what. Mark Bisque, our Canadian friends there, Mark and Elena. Johnny and I, of course, been to Elena's mom and dad. Well, I've been there multiple times. We're more, Canadian 27, he says, we're more than just angry with Trump and his band of idiots, but we know they don't reflect the America we know. And to all those who have been so kind, generous, and brave alongside Ukrainians, we thank you. Thank you, Mark. That's a very nice comment, and it does not reflect on the vast majority of Americans, even on both parties or independents that are standing with Ukraine. It's not a representation of us. Dunk on You 23, gifting 10 memberships. Darren Vaughn, the redneck from Virginia. Let's surrender to the army using donkeys, $1.99. Haha, exactly. Rick Netherlands with the $5.99 euros, super sticker there. F oink out of Hungary. Repeat after me. Ukraine friendly, Russia bad. Shouldn't be too hard for Donald to remember. Rick from the Netherlands, a crew member. And U.S. is actively helping Russia break the deal. I think, Rick, that's exactly what we're talking about. Bad News Badger, thank you for that super chat. I have a lot of conversations with Americans that love Trump and Musk due to non-Ukraine related stuff. Right now, our counter $350 billion with that is less than $2 a day per taxpayer, what else can be done? Exactly. And speaking of that, it looks like the relationship with Musk and Trump starting to have some cracks.
Yeah, that's an important point. I'd say two things here.
Go for it.
One, there are a lot of Republicans that appreciate other things that Trump is doing to shake up the system within the U.S., whether you think that's a good thing or not. That has nothing to do with a stance on Ukraine. And so you can't like look at it monolithically and say, oh, you're for all of this. You just hate Ukraine. No. Just understand that different people have different motivations, and foreign policy tends to be very low on the totem pole. Second thing is the cracks between Trump and Musk. If that cracks, Tesla stock went from 375 or so to 250 recently. So before that cracks, it's time to buy some Tesla stock. So
that's true.
I'm just saying, I'm looking at it because the fundamentals of Tesla hasn't gone down. It's just people just don't like what Musk is doing. So I'm just saying.
I know, but it's unfortunate that this is the world in which we're living. It goes to a whole completely different topic where I don't even think an owner of a company should be sitting in cabinet meetings and assisting with policy decisions or even heading up departments. I mean, today he was snipped. He's not able to fire anybody anymore. Well, that's good news. Ministry for the Recovery of Stolen Toilets, Australian $2. Good day. And can we all agree Trump's a baby and spiteful? I think I'd agree with that. I'm not sure about Prof, but
hold on. Somebody just asked me something. Hey, do you mean that Zelensky should sign Trump's contract even when it's bad? No, I'm saying he has to smile and try to get along as well as he possibly can for the good of his country. Look, Zelensky's a stud, man. He said the other day, he was asked, would you resign? He said, for NATO membership, I would resign. That's hardcore, right? I mean, that's good leadership. So
that's a sacrificial leader.
Yeah. But to just, when I say eat humble pie, okay, put up with as much as you can possibly put up for the good of what you're trying to accomplish. You have a partner that is not necessarily reliable or whatever, but that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying like he should have to roll over. It's unfortunate that that's where we are.
Michelle Esquire, a $10 super chat. Follow the evidence. Putin owns Donald Trump. Listen, all of these stories, and thank you for that, Michelle. There's going to be so much coming out, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I hate conspiracy theories, but the reality is, there's just a whole lot at play here globally that we do not understand, because there's no way that you can look at an invading nation that is wiping a nation off the planet and not hold them at fault. It's not possible. Sorry. And sanctions are not holding at fault.
So a big piece of the puzzle does seem to be missing, doesn't it?
It does. Linda S., Australia, 50 Australians. We've known for 3 years that Putin won't concede without taking land, sea, and air from Ukraine. That discussion is moot. We need to start looking forward, not back. Ukrainian citizens deserve better. Completely agree. Linda F. Oink, my Hungarian brother, coming in, repeat after me. Donnie is not meddling in elections. He's just following orders. It's just really strange. I will give you that, Mr. Oink. 50 gifted memberships there as well. Thank you for that. Adam Rounds gifting 5 memberships. Joanne Sterling, $4.99 super sticker there. Thank you guys so much. Now, let's turn the narrative a little bit and talk about, for the remaining part of the stream here, Prof, some good news. And some interesting news that I think is worthy of paying attention to. Germany rapid aid package is on the table. So with all of this happening, let's lay the groundwork before we go into this. With all of this happening, the meeting that's going to happen next week in Saudi Arabia, supposedly on Tuesday, Zelensky going to Saudi Arabia. Zelensky was in Europe today. Macron's speech, which I'm going to play a piece of that in a minute. I want Prof's response on a certain section. All of these things. I have Lavrov's response translated. I voiced it over. I have Putin's response for you guys in just a minute. While all of that is happening, the EU is starting to stand up in multiple ways, even stronger. Germany has formed a military aid package for Ukraine worth about 3 billion euros, and rapid financing of this package is currently being discussed, says German Defense Minister Pistorius. I'm not an expert on German politics, but for me, that must be a good thing. When asked whether this amount includes Taurus missiles, he replied that these discussions have been going on for the past few days and will continue in the coming days.
And right now, this isn't new money. This is something they've been working at. So it looks like it's new money, but that's only because it's just about. But there have been long discussions about it.
So but what does this mean when they're rapid now talking about it? Is this, they're going to bring it to fruition finally?
So theoretically, they're trying to push this through before the new government comes in, so that the old government is blamed for it with Schultz's crowd before the new ones come in, and then they'll have a harder time pushing things through.
Gotcha. Thank you. Let's go here. Your opinion? I mean, I know what your PhD is in. Trump and it was in multiple. I just grabbed that one picture. It's everywhere. Trump considering major NATO policy shift. U.S. President Trump's considering changing the format of U.S. participation in NATO, basing it on new financial structure, including abandoning the obligation to defend the allies if they are attacked, which is Article 5.
This is like the worst piece of public policy that I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, you're making us so untrustworthy to our friends and allies. It's just bad.
This goes right back to the Marco Rubio video we played at the beginning, where you can't trust any security guarantees. That's it. Trust is gone. EU
I'm not
Parliament.
sure.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if he can unilaterally do that. I think it would require some kind of undoing of the treaty. So the way it works in our system is your Constitution is the highest, and then treaties are second highest law in the land, right? And we have some kind of treaty obligations with NATO that would require, I think, undoing it, I would think. And you'd have to write that. The Senate would have to concur, and then unless I have my facts wrong, I'm not sure exactly what the NATO Article 5 treaty thing is like, but I think it would take more than just some executive order in order to do that.
But even
Trump
just
really
talking
loves
about it,
executive
I mean, it's
orders.
just, listen, but it's what he does. You've talked about this before. I think many times we've talked about it with the shock value, whether it's the tariffs on, the terrorists off. I mean, honestly, the wishy-washy leadership, I know there's probably some logic somewhere that I don't comprehend, but for me, it sure looks wishy-washy. The renaming of the Gulf of America, the renaming of the Gulf of America. I guess that could be a compromise, Gulf of America, or Mexicarica, I don't know. But regardless, and then, even continuing in his speech the other night to talk about Greenland, and then if you'd have just left it alone, the people of Greenland can make their decision. It sounds to me like Putin talking to the citizens of Kherson and Crimea. The people living in Crimea can make their own decision. The people of Kherson, we can do a referendum and they can make their own decision. That's what he said. And then he took it a step farther. We're going to get Greenland one way or the other. We're going to get it. I mean, come on. And then you talk about NATO. It's just so much out there that, for me, I just really struggle with it, Prof. Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
There's a temperamental issue here as well as the policy issue, and that's something that I find throughout MAGA. The temperamental, it's very similar to, on the left, the deplatforming progressive side of things, and I think both of those are wrong. I'm not saying it's the same stuff, but there's this vitriolic kind of, it's got to be my way or the highway. No, sit down and work things out like adults.
Correct.
Put your big boy
Angie,
pants on.
Good question here. I can answer this for you, Angie. Is it true Ukrainians on visas are being kicked out of the United States? The answer to that right now is that is what was being talked about in certain situations.
It was also denied by the press secretary.
Well, it was, but also Donald Trump, just before I went on the stream, made a statement sitting at his desk saying, we're now having some good conversations with Ukraine. I will be reviewing the Ukrainians that are in the United States.
I think that discussion is to put extra pressure. That's my read. I could be wrong, but that's my read.
Fair enough. Let's go here now. Let's talk about EU Parliament, President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola. The situation today is exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Ukraine is fighting for Europe. Europe needs to be hand in hand, lockstep with whoever's fighting for our security and values. Ukraine's security is Europe's security. Take a listen to her here, and she has one colorful word.
I'll be a little bit more blunt than usual today, and our message on this day of a special European Council on Defence is that it is about damn time. This is something that we have been asking for a long time, that the European Union, that Europe is capable of standing up on its own 2 feet. That's why we've been saying we need to scale up, we need to be prepared, we need to produce, and we need to protect. That is essentially what our citizens are asking from us. That is essentially what it will take for Europe to say that we are ready to put, finally, our money where our mouth is. On Ukraine, the situation today is exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Ukraine is fighting for Europe, and Europe needs to be hand in hand, lockstep with whoever is fighting for our security, for our values. Ukraine's security is Europe's security. And today, more than ever, also with the president of the country, we will stand with him and will say, we are with you. But to do that, we need to do more. We need to make sure that even here we put our money where our mouth is, that we help financially, that we help militarily, and we're able to say that yes, what you are fighting is what we will be fighting for together. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So there you have it, Prof. What's your opinion on her speaking there?
Well, it's the right rhetoric, but it's been the right rhetoric for the last 3 years.
She's Maltese.
So I'll believe it when I see it. So I think they're fired up. I think they're like shook up by Trump and going, oh, is something like changed here and we got to do something. But it's the rhetoric has not changed. The action is what has to change. We're behind you. You know, it's like that meme. We need air support. You're doing a great job, right? I mean, so when they actually do it, and now some of them have actually done a lot, right? The artillery thing from the Czechs, awesome. Poland, you've been stepping up. And like the UK, you've been like Boris Johnson first on the ground, Macron later on stepping up, like good. I'll give them props where props are due. But as far as Europe, getting the message that you've got to really take this thing by the horns.
This is so good. Mertzi, big supporter of Ukraine. He's been there and volunteered. He was noticing the same thing I did. Those guys need to cool it with the microphones. They were putting them all in her face. That's pretty funny. Joey T coming in with an interesting comment. If the U.S. are intending to leave NATO, then they shouldn't have any say on who can join it. Good point.
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe you should push Trump to get out.
Exactly. Get out of NATO. Then Ukraine can get into NATO. Who knows, man? The way this is going.
Who said that?
Joey T.
Joey T.
I'll put it
Joey,
back up there.
can I cite you? Can I use that? If I forget your name, forgive me, but that is a great point. Absolutely. A+, Joey.
Joey T, give us a confirmation in the chat there. So Prof wants to use your quote on a new video coming up.
He gets an A+.
No doubt,
he passes.
Yeah, you get extra credit in the class today.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this. This is my question for you. I'm going to play a couple of things. And yes, Prof, you're welcome to use Joey T.
Oh, thank you, Joey. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's go here, and we're going to close up here in just a few minutes. How does this fit in? Okay, so with everything we've said, the meetings next week, which we just have questions about, no real answers, peace, very little to no direct conversation about the fault of Vladimir Putin or the fault of Russia in this, just a little minor talk that we may increase sanctions. In regard to peace talks, it is Ukraine that must do it and not Russia, is what we're hearing at this point. And this is why we have all these colossal questions that are happening. But what we have is the leader of France who comes out, and I want to play these two clips, and says these bold statements. And my question will be, I'll play both clips back to back. My question will be for you, Prof. You can think about it while the video is playing. Does this change anything?
By 2030, Russia aims to mobilize 3 million more troops and add 4,000 tanks to its arsenal. Who knows if Russian aggression in Ukraine will ever stop? Could Russia become a threat to Europe? I believe peace will eventually come to our continent when Russia becomes peaceful. But the situation I'm describing now is dangerous. Keep helping Ukraine stay strong in talks with Russia, so they can achieve peace on their own terms. This matters to both them and us. Peace can't come at any cost. Peace can't mean Ukraine's surrender or destruction. We can't accept an unstable truce as peace. Remember, Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014. We signed Minsk agreements which Russia broke. Russia violated those agreements. They failed to keep their promises. We can't trust Russia's word anymore. Ukraine deserves security and peace, which benefits Europe too. We're working with allies like the UK and Germany on this.
So there you have it. He's calling it point blank, Russia's fault. They're dangerous and they can't be trusted.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an analogy that's a little weird. So if I'm at work and I walk up behind some woman and I pat her on the butt and give her a kiss, okay? I am sexually harassing, unless, because context matters, that's my wife, right? If it's my wife, everything changes, okay? I'm no longer creepy. I'm just a loving husband, okay? So same thing here. We need to have the context where we say, look, who is the perpetrator? Ukraine is being victimized by Russia. Like, if I could just message for these guys, and I'm not a communication consultant or anything like that, but Ukraine is being victimized by Russia. Russia is the victimizer here, and they just need to just keep that mantra front and center in front of everything. Before you say any sentence that you say Russia is the perpetrator. We need a just peace because Russia keeps violating the sanctity of Ukraine, and Russia has just killed X number of people last night, and Russia, and like, just keep pounding that freaking message because that's the reality here. And we're like letting it be like, well, we need peace and Russia needs to stop and Ukraine needs to stop. No, you need to keep saying that. So, okay.
So you're happy with what Macron did?
I mean, I think everybody ought to do that.
I mean,
everyone ought to.
I agree with you. I just think it needs to come from everywhere, just like you're saying, and that should be the only talking point.
Look at how the party out of power after a presidential speech, this happened last night or 2 nights ago as well, is on message. In politics, you call this being on message. We're saying the same thing. Like, they all have the same script. It's fascinating to watch, right? They all got kind of the talking points and they say little variants of that. That's what all of Europe needs to be saying right now as they push back and say, Russia has to stop their aggression against Ukraine. So if we're going to talk about a ceasefire, blah, blah, blah.
Ian Leal, thank you for the question here regarding Minsk. Both the U.S. and UK broke their agreement as well. How do they deal with this? Obviously, very poorly. I can tell you how Ukrainians think about it. We see what the UK is doing. We see what Starmer's doing. We see what Boris Johnson did. We see what the United States is doing. That's all I can answer. But I can tell you right now from the Ukrainian perspective, they do not trust the United States or the UK as far as they can throw them, period.
Yeah, we're giving them a reason. Yeah.
So that's the end result of it. There's no trust. It's the same thing Rubio said when he was sane before he now has towed the party, the MAGA line, when he was calling it the way it is. Nobody, there's no security guarantees. It's broken. And anyway, so now in regard, and we're closing out here with this, Lavrov responds to Macron. Lavrov responds to Macron.
Yeah.
Here it is. We see no places for compromise in this. This discussion that was had was being conducted to be openly hostile, and that was the purpose of it. You see, they're not hiding why they're doing it. And in particular, Macron, and he's backed by Starmer, they're going to take Zelensky to Washington. But Macron and Starmer believe that it's necessary to suspend hostilities for a month, at least in the air and the sea, and regard to strikes on energy facilities. And during that month, they're going to deploy troops there in parallel while peace is negotiated in terms. But listen, if you put troops into a territory, you probably don't want to negotiate any conditions because you are creating different facts on the ground. Very interesting statement. Now, I know you're ready to roll. I can see it in your eyes, but it's interesting. Lavrov speaking the same thing that Zelensky just said. Okay, if we want peace, stop the attacks on energy, stop the air, stop the sea, all of those things. Lavrov says, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So, like, they're not going to be supporting their lines, or if there was like this truce, there wouldn't be movement for the Russians trying to bolster everything. Come on. Like, it's almost ridiculous for him. Like, how he can say the things he says with a straight face without laughing, I don't understand.
Because he has a
like,
reprobate mind.
Well,
no, I'm
it's got to be
okay.
something.
Listen,
like,
I'm going to tell you. And okay, guys, just listen to me on this.
I couldn't make it through saying the kind of stuff that he says. Like, if I had his job, I couldn't help myself but be like,
okay, think about, go with me on this for 1 second. And I don't want to make this philosophical or we have to call Johnny, but listen, he believes it. That's how he can say it with a straight face. That is why Donald Trump can say the stupid things he says many times that are just like inflammatory, because he believes it. And Lavrov actually believes what he's saying. Putin believes what he's saying. And everybody in the stream may disagree with me completely on this one point.
I don't think that's right. I don't think that he believes it so much as he puts it forward to make it so, because truth doesn't matter to him. But all I was saying,
believe it.
I don't know. I think he knows better, and truth doesn't matter, and you still want to put it forward anyway to achieve your ends. But I just couldn't bring myself to say that. I'm not that good of a liar.
Well, I will tell you this. Mertzy has a good comment here. Guarantee Lavrov can pass any lie detector test.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
exactly. Fair enough on that. Additionally, hold on. Let me do this. Great comment here. A.F. Kaplan, decades of indoctrination and pacification can do a lot.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
But again, truth is not that high of a value. It's like in the Soviets' mind. So going back to the Soviet Union times, like, you could use truth in the pursuit of your goals of furthering Soviet whatever, and that was perfectly acceptable morality. So that's why I'm conceding the lie detector test.
Okay, this is good. This is good here. We opened up a good little talk here to close it out. Here we go. I think there's just validity in all of this. Mad at Max saying, Greg, no, not 100%. He knows his lies have no consequences. That's a good point.
There's that too.
And then,
or they have consequences that work out for him. And
that's correct. And here's just not good. I am very familiar with liars. They do, in fact, believe what they say. I call them a liar and they scream, why do you call me a liar? That's kind of what I'm saying. Eventually, they actually begin to believe this stuff that they're spewing very much. And we know, guys, the biggest liar of them all is deluded. And there was also Amy's comment here that I want to get back from what we were talking about. Macron is speaking collectively for Europe. That's beautiful. And I hope he continues and others join him. And then Angie, UK either, we're still helping. And that was a comment in regard to when I stated that Ukrainians do not trust the American UK. It's not about the people, Angie, or anybody else out there. They're very thankful for the help and the people. It's about government security promises they don't trust.
I think the UK has held up their side pretty well, trying to keep things rolling.
Much better than America.
They were incredibly instrumental, especially early on. And right now early on with Boris, and right now with Starmer.
Agreed. Let's go to the last one now. So Vladimir Putin was meeting, and now we're talking about the greatest liar. Vladimir Putin was meeting with mothers of soldiers who have given their lives. I hate to even say it that politely. I hate to say it even that politely. He was sitting at a round table, oval table, with mothers of Russian soldiers who were killed. Let me say it that way. Invading Ukraine. That's a much better way to say it. And he's being asked about their legacy. He's being asked about how the future will look and what will Russia's perspective and future be, and specifically in regard to not only Ukraine, but what America is saying, the peace talks, the future of the war. And they were asking, did my sons die in vain? So that basically is laying the groundwork for you. And here comes what Putin said. We must choose for ourselves such a peace option that will suit us, and this will ensure tranquility for our country for a long historical term. We do not need anything that is foreign, but we will not give up what is ours. And we need such an option that would ensure the stable development of our country. It's got to be stable and peaceful and secure. So there you have it. Cheryl's saying they're probably FSB agents. Yeah, very well could be. The reality is, though, he says we don't need anything foreign, and what is ours is ours. And I'm telling you right now, in his mind, on the books of the Russian Constitution, are the 4 regions of Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Direct reference to that.
I'm just curious, as a practical question, how much land do you actually need in order to be secure? So, and when I say that, I say, look, if you really meant that this was because of a foreign threat, those 4 oblasts would be not oblasts, but no man's land, right? That would be a neutral territory. That's no man's land that nobody can cross. But now, on the other side of that, of those 4 oblasts, you need some kind of buffer zone all the way to, say, Kyiv. That's the way so how much is enough? It'll never be enough.
This is what Ukraine is saying. This is what Europe is saying. And this is a great way to close out this huge day of questions where we don't have a lot of answers. And we're just kind of massaging the information and talking through it and coming to some conclusions. I'll check the latest air update before we close out and let you guys know, because I told you about that at the beginning of the stream. But the reality is, first of all, Prof, let me tell you how it is in Lugansk and Donetsk and Zaporizhia and Kherson, in every place that Russia occupies. And then on the Ukrainian held side, it's within 10, 15 kilometers. Mm-hmm. It's complete devastation on the occupied side. The cities are laid waste. I'm talking cities that had 100,000, 150,000 in them, like Lysychansk and Severodonetsk and Bakhmut, and the list can go on. They are leveled to the ground. The amount of pollution and metal in the ground from this war for 3 years, it is the most toxic place, one of the most toxic places on the planet. It is the most mined place in the world. This is now a no man's land. So you are correct, 100%. That is a laid wasteland. So then what becomes the next region, the next area? And this is modus operandi for Russia. So
I'm saying they should have intentionally made it that, rather than call it part of the Russian territory. But how many atrocities do you think? I mean, how bad is this going to be compared to what the Nazis did on the other side of World War II, when we actually open up those 4 oblasts and we find out just what the Russians have been doing to those people? Yeah, it's going to be shocking to the world, in my estimation.
Well, even from early in the war, and I know you guys remember the early videos when we all were shocked, early February or late February of 22 and beginnings of March, and the stories of Bucha and Irpin and Gostomel, Mariupol, the theater with the children's name on top of it,
Mhm.
Yeti, meaning
And they bombed it because it said children.
and they
So
bombed it.
that's what you're dealing with.
Yes, and I've got personal numbers that at least 20,000 Mariupol citizens were killed. They're early stages of the war, and the people that have told me that, I trust them explicitly. There's been thousands of children taken out of Ukraine into Russia and indoctrinated. These are not conspiracy theories, and you
Mhm.
try to. These are facts, ladies and gentlemen. These are facts. And even with all of that said, how on earth is it possible for a sane human being that has any empathy at all not give any blame or onus to the invading nation? When we can answer that, we can get this thing ended in a secure and just peace for Ukraine. But until we can get the blinders pulled off of those in leadership to recognize that there is such an evil atrocity happening in Ukraine, until that is recognized, I think we're going to continue in this cycle of chaos and madness. That's my 2
Yep.
cents.
Yep.
Well, thank you. I can tell you guys right now, 30 Shaheeds are in the air. They're in Chernigiv and Sumy, heading towards Kyiv. They're over Kharkiv. They're over Poltava. They're over the Donetsk Oblast, and they're all coming out of the Belgorod region and the Kursk region. And this is typically what happens. So we'll watch. It's early yet for those Shaheeds. So it's very possible, just keep your eyes on your news.
So it's +7 from East Coast time, right? So it'd be midnight,
+7.
just
So
after
about
midnight.
7 p.m., 8 p.m. is when you start to hear if the planes are in the air. And at that
No.
point,
What I'm saying, it's +7 hours. So it's 5 now. +7 is going to put it at 12 midnight in Ukraine, right?
yes, correct.
Okay.
It's midnight. The Shaheeds are flying, and typically about 2 a.m. So in about 2 hours from now is when we start first getting the update reports if the Tupolovs are in the air, if the MiG-31s are in the air. And the reason they're important to listen to, and it's not really the Sukhoi jets, but is because they are capable of carrying the Kinjals and the daggers. And those are the hypersonic missiles that the Patriots can stop, not every time. And I'm just here to tell you guys what the reality is. And I need to give some final thanks here, and you probably do as well. But when Zhenya and you need to understand something about a ballistic missile attack. You do not hear the missile. So I just want everybody that's watching right now to think about that. You do not hear the missile. It is so fast that all you hear and feel is the explosion. It's the same thing with a glide bomb. You do not hear the glide bomb coming in. I was 2 streets over from a glide bomb exploding, and it rocked our world in the Sumy Oblast. You guys that follow me, you know that Zhenya and I were caught in the Odessa strike with ballistics, and we were trapped right there trying to get out, and they kept coming. You cannot hear them. There is no, that's artillery. That's incoming artillery going at a speed where you hear it with the whistle and then the explosion. A ballistic, it's like you and I are just speaking, Prof, and then boom, complete explosion. And that's what happened in Krvoy Rih last night. Unfortunately, that death toll now at 4 and 32 wounded there in the Central Hotel. And once again, silence from the world. Silence.
Yeah, man and a wife just walking down the street, going to the grocery store.
Yep.
He's dead. She had a leg amputated. And this is everyday reality in Ukraine. And Russia needs to be held accountable for that. And that's the way that every European ally ought to be talking about this. Just talking about that. Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk about a ceasefire.
Exactly.
But not just when we need a ceasefire.
Exactly. F-Oink, thank you there, and with your chat there, super chat there. Who needs enemies with Trump on their side? And the additional one saying thank you, mods. Once again, thank you to all of our moderators on my channel, on Professor Gerdes' channel. Thank you to Dunk on You, Blonde Bombsheller. We have a new moderator also. Mr. Pyro, thank you so much. Appreciate all of you guys, all the mods on Prof's channel. This has been wonderful, because honestly, I didn't even know this was what I was going to do. In fact, there's a message coming in for you right now on my channel, Prof. Spot on, Prof. Accountability. Captain T Obvious. Nice stream, boys. Thank you for that. We'll leave it with that one. Thank you, guys.
It's a good way to end. Let's just shut up before anything else goes wrong.
It is. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you later. I will roll the outro. So if you're here on Professor Gerdes' channel, I usually have an intro and outro. I will roll it at 60 seconds so you can, all guys can say bye to each other in the chat. Be blessed and have a good night, and stay tuned. Make sure your notifications on. Subscribe to Professor Gerdes' channel, or if you're on Gerdes', subscribe to my channel. We partner together, work together for faith, freedom, future, fearlessness. I'm looking for one more F, but that's usually
I don't
a bad
know,
word.
but that's a lot of
Fs.
alliteration.
Have fun. We'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Слава Україні!